Uh, Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:31. This is a Resource Conservation Committee meeting for June 13th, 2022. Diane, would you like to be a timekeeper?
I think Chris is timekeeper today.
Is he? Okay. Chris?
Right, Chris?
Sure. Yeah, I can be the timekeeper.
Okay. Okay. Next item on our agenda is public appearance for it's for non-agenda items. So is there anybody out there for non-agenda items, Scott?
Sorry, Ron. No, there are not.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 3, approval of the meeting minutes, draft minutes from May 9th, 2022 RCC meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move.
I'll second.
Okay, open for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I'd go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for May 9th, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it.
I'll abstain. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yeah, do we have a quorum to vote on that since Gabriella can't vote on it?
Oh, we got Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, is Josh there?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
Josh
seeing
is
that.
there,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just for Kim and Will won't be joining us tonight. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that it would still count though, because an abstention is still a vote, even if it doesn't change the outcome.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Gabriella. All right, item 4 on the agenda, new business. Resolution R-120-22, establishing the criteria for granting of special privileges for the use of street right-of-ways for terrace gardens. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I move approval.
Second?
You have to second to facilitate discussion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Open for discussion. So in the audience, we have a member of the public who would like to comment on this resolution.
Ron, would you like either Gabriella or myself to give a quick overview, or should we hear from the public first and then do the overview?
Sure, Phil, why don't you go ahead and give a quick overview? There's a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of weird echo as well.
Yeah.
So I assume everybody looked through the agenda. Out to their alders expressing a desire to essentially use the grassy terraced area in front of their homes. They're asking for permission to garden in that, where, you know, terrace areas that need to be maintained by the residents anyway, lawn mowing and things like that. And they'd like to garden there. So Alders Allen and Maldonado looked at Madison, saw that in Madison, that ability is simply allowed to all residents. In Fitchburg, there's an ordinance that currently disallows anything like gardening on that terrace. So this resolution here would set criteria to allow residents to use that terrace for gardening. They would pay a $30 annual fee that would have to be renewed every year. This would essentially be a temporary granting of this right to the homeowner. If they essentially violate the criteria, if they move, then the permission would no longer apply to that home, and it would go back to needing to be a grassy area. Is that pretty close to the gist of it?
Yep. Yeah, and
Okay.
it definitely was instigated by some residents that expressed interest in doing something similar to what people do in the city of Madison.
Okay, and one notable wrinkle would be that if this is in front of your home, you simply apply for permission. If you live in, say, a cul-de-sac that has an unpaved center, that sort of landscaped or grassy center area in this cul-de-sac, you would need to get written permission from all of your neighbors who also live on that cul-de-sac for you to be able to garden, to apply for permission to garden that area yourself.
So that
thanks, Ron.
permission-
And
That
Well,
permission addendum only applies to the cul-de-sac, not everyone?
I'm unclear on multifamily. It doesn't apply to single family homes. I don't know about like a multifamily building with a single grassy terrace.
No,
But
So that, can you,
can,
so in a,
so
I'm getting a lot of feedback also, but in the unpaved area, they're talking about like the cul-de-sac circle that,
yes,
or-
correct. And before we get too far into discussion, I think this would be a good place for our resident to provide his comments. Then we can get into a little bit more Q&A.
Okay, so in the audience, I believe we have Troy Klein. Hi, Troy. Thank you for attending and thank you for your written comments.
All right, thank you.
You
I'm not
have
gonna
3 minutes to share your comments with us.
duplicate what I sent to you in an email. I have some added comments. The Dane County geocoded database is called DCI map, and that defines every square inch of ownership of land in Dane County. That map, DCI map software, says all of the land described as terrace in this resolution is publicly owned by Fitchburg. Using DCI map, no public lands in Fitchburg, this includes the terrace, have reversionary rights to anyone, including an adjacent landowner. If no reversionary rights exist, then a key qualification for an applicant for a terrace garden under this resolution no longer exists, and accordingly, there are no qualified pool of applicants per this resolution. The reversionary rights exclusion further eliminates renters and residents of dwellings who are owned by a corporation or LLC. So paradoxically, some homeowners who have owned their home through an LLC may not apply. Madison does have land deeds with reversionary rights in parts of the city platted earlier in the city's history before the 1950s, when mass developments became common after World War II. Some of the terraces in Fitchburg have sidewalks. Most terraces in areas do not have sidewalks, and the roads are major roads like arterials and collectors. I think that residents, neighborhood associations, and any other civic association that wishes to contribute resources to maintaining unpaved areas and cul-de-sacs and roundabouts are to be commended and encouraged with guidance from the city. All usage of public lands in Fitchburg, especially those owned and controlled by Fitchburg, need to be coordinated and uniform. Having a special exception for dwelling owners who happen to be on a gold cul-de-sac excludes everybody else in the city who resides on a part of the city that has a grassy terrain or something else in the terrace area that could be used. So I think I'm against creating a policy for the city where a very select group of people are able to have a right to something that no one else does. I've looked at the City of Madison ordinance. It's their ordinance 10.25, and they have a very carefully regulated procedure with pre-approvals and enforcement mechanisms, and this ordinance is drafted has none of those.
Thank you, Troy. Go ahead and like to open up our discussion among the commission members.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm still not clear on this. And let me just give you a little bit of history. We have in my development, we have what we call traffic circles. And in my cul-de-sac, we have a little circle. And way back, I can't remember, it was when Paul Woodard was Department of Public Works chair, the head of it. We asked him, because that was at that time maintained by the city, all of them, the circles in the cul-de-sac and the traffic circles. We asked him, specifically I asked him, if we couldn't plant those in like flowers or whatever and maintain them. And he said, as long as you don't, he wanted to see the plan for planting. He didn't want any rocks and no perennial grasses. And he approved us to do that, provided that he approved our plan, provided that we maintain it. So we're not paying anything to the city. We don't have an annual renewal. And actually we've hired a company to maintain it. And if you look at, I live in Seminole Highlands, but the development just west of us, they also maintain their traffic center circles and cul-de-sac things, and they too don't pay an annual fee. So I'm not. This is a little bit. Seems like we have a double standard here, and I also think I got the impression that this was talking about people being able to take the area from where a sidewalk would be and the curb and plant that the way they would like to plant that. Is that true? So
That's what this is. Primarily, that's what this is.
Okay.
Yes, it includes a stipulation that it can be the cul-de-sac, that center between the cul-de-sac, but primarily the intention of it is to allow people to garden in the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, if they're on a street with curb and gutter.
Or if they don't have a sidewalk, it would be the 4 feet from the curb in.
So would this be, what about the places where like my neighborhood and the neighborhood just west of us that have been doing this all along with no permit needed, or, I mean, we got the okay from the city a long time ago. That's one of my questions. And secondly, I think that it would be nice to I would like to see a way that this can go forward. I read Public Works comments, and I think a lot of things have to be flushed out. But I also am concerned about visibility right now. When you drive down the street, that terrace area is mowed, and so you can see if anybody or anything is darting out from the sidewalk. So I would say the same concerns that Paul Woodard expressed when we were doing the landscaping for the traffic circles. No boulders, no tall perennial grasses, so that field of vision is not obstructed. I guess those are two of my concerns. And my third concern is, I think unpaved area is ambiguous. So if this moves forward, I think that needs to be clarified a lot. That's all.
Phil, Gabrielle, has any of the city attorneys looked at this wording?
Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill. I was going to say, my understanding is yes, but I actually don't know for sure. So please. Same
as my answer. So I'm not sure what Public Works comments are out there, Diane, but I definitely watched the Parks Commission discussion on this, and we do have a number of comments submitted by Pat Cheney with the Parks Commission. He echoed some of those concerns as well. The visibility, whether you're turning a corner and need visibility to see cars coming, or people or pets or other entities that, as you say, would be darting out into the street. Just for context in this right now, the RCC is the third committee to be considering this currently. The Board of Public Works pushed this off to their next meeting. So their second meeting in June, the Board of Public Works is going to address this. The Park Commission took Pat Cheney's 17, I think, comments. And I believe those were included in the documents in our packet.
They are.
But took those 17 comments and submitted them to the council for additional fleshing out. I don't believe the Parks Commission took a vote. They kind of wanted to defer this to Board of Public Works and Common Council to make the decision, and they simply kind of expressed their questions and concerns. So my guess is it seems like, and from what I heard from Alder Allen, it seems like regardless of what the ultimate decision is, if council moves forward with this, it's going to need some additional work to make sure that everything is really clean and thought through.
By the way, Bill Bulkey's comments were included in the packet also.
Right. Yeah. So there were a couple of staff comments, questions about who would be on staff, who would be in charge of monitoring this. We're talking about an additional significant staff load to handle the permitting. Whether we would be creating a new ordinance for this, some of the same concerns about height and vision ability for drivers and residents. Yeah. So certainly RCC can vote on this. I assume RCC could choose not to vote and simply send along comments or questions.
I'm under impression that we need to know more here. And before even I can cast a vote, I need to know more about this resolution and the impacts of it to the city, particularly city staff. I mean, are there to be city people driving around looking at these people that submitted the application or a permit application, going out and measuring their heights of their plants, making sure they don't exceed 30 inches? You know, what if it goes to 33 inches? What are you going to do? You know, are you going to waste time and write a citation? Is there going to be a citation or what? Are you going to have them come out there and clip it down to 30 inches?
This is working
city staff.
So this is working off just a pure assumption here, but based on how the city currently handles the lawn height ordinance, your lawn is not to exceed 8 inches, but nobody on city staff drives around and measures it. It's complaint based. So if somebody were to complain to the city, then staff would go check it out. And if it were in violation, a citation would be issued with 2 weeks given to correct the issue and come into compliance with code. I assume this would most likely be handled the same way.
So what would happen if you do have a high plant, say it's 35 inches, person backing out of their driveway to someone who has this terrace garden, doesn't see a car coming or a kid because they're blinded by the vegetation and they hit the kid, is the city going to be liable for not, you know, ensuring proper height of the vegetation in that? What's our liability?
I think that would be a really good question for the attorney.
Yeah, I just...
I do.
I think there's
agree
a
with
lot
this.
that needs to be flushed out.
Yeah.
I do. I will state that I think that there's a lot that needs to be fleshed out. I think that there's a lot of questions that I and clearly this group and other committees have had on this. All that being said, I'm generally in support of it. I think that if we can find a way for residents to provide their funded and their maintained beautification of public space in this way, I certainly think there's a good mission for this. There's an opportunity for native plantings and non-lawn and everything else that I think this commission should be in support of. And so I think that we should find a way to make this work. And I will say that there are many layers of this that are already present in what the city does, right? Like lawn height, like the fact that bushes can just naturally overgrow and provide that same vision block, right? That clearly the city has found some way to maintain a balance of we cite when we need to and we're not liable kind of based on that. But I'm not saying that this is ready to implement in that way, right? I think we need to gather from other resolutions that have established those parameters and apply them here and shore this up in a way that it can actually be implemented. But I am strongly in favor of getting this to the finish line. Phil, I guess my question is, when you think of all these pieces of feedback and all these different groups, is there an opportunity for a member from each of the committees involved to work on a working session with the staff to help draft this so that it's not so much round and round we go in terms of waiting on meetings, and we could actually, you know, kind of bring these perspectives in a working session?
I think that sounds like a great idea. I cannot speak to whether it's logistically feasible, but you know, it certainly is. It's certainly a suggestion that I could bring to, you know, I know Scott Endel and Bill Balke have been involved on the staff side of this, and I could ask them if they think that's doable.
I mean, it seems like someone's already made a comment that the city staff have already spent too much time on this.
I'd like to add a little bit to what Josh said, because the city already, if there's a visibility problem with, for example, the traffic circles that have been landscaped by homeowners or neighborhood associations, the city already, it's not a citation. They just tell you, you know, this, you need to get this cut back. So he's right. They're already doing things, and the city already has an ordinance about lawn upkeep that the city's building inspector is supposed to enforce. So I agree with him. I think that it would be nice to find a way to move this forward. You know, if anybody wanted to put in a rain garden on that terrace, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I don't know that that's covered under here, and I think it is probably not, because all of this stuff under this plan, everything has to be removed in October, and you don't remove a rain garden. But I like the idea. It just, a lot of details have to be worked out. And one final thing, I'm not exactly clear on why a permit is necessary. It seems to me that just gums things up. Staff has to take time to process it. You know, it just, I'm not exactly sure the purpose of the permit.
So I actually had two questions for Gabriella. One of them related to that last point, whether there was a reason that, so we have residents can apply with the planning department or with building inspection to get approval for native lawns and native landscapes that would be not in compliance with the current lawn ordinance, but maybe they want to plant things like short prairie grasses that doesn't have a permit associated. I'm curious if there was talk about copying Madison's model and just making this something that's allowed as long as you follow a set of criteria rather than a fee-based permit.
I mean, it's an interesting question. So my understanding, I've talked to Alder Allen a little bit about this. My understanding was he mirrored this off of an ordinance that was created a while back. I think it was something like people were allowed in a cul-de-sac to put up a basketball hoop during the daylight hours to play basketball, and then they could pull it back in.
Yeah.
So basically, provide people so Diane, you're familiar with this. It basically a permit, so people were allowed to do that because they were being told that they weren't allowed to do it. It wasn't necessarily best practice, but they were just like, okay, tell us you're going to do this, put a permit together, and then you can pull it back in at night. And that way, there's knowledge that this is a known issue for the city. So when people complain, there's kind of like some sort of paperwork on it. That's not a great explanation, but that's kind of my understanding. So this policy sort of mirrored that structure. Because it was something that had been done in the city. It had somewhat of a similar, whereas like where with a similar background where with the basketball hoop, people were complaining about it. So they kind of fixed it with the permit process. That's my understanding about how this particular iteration of it came forward. And there was no interest in like making this happen sooner rather than later in some form so that people can start planting a garden this year if they'd like.
The basketball thing was because people were playing in the streets. So, you know, they didn't want people, this is a little bit different than that. And I think adding the layer of a permit, I just think that's not necessary.
Could I ask one more question, Gabriella? Just in terms of kind of the logistics of this and sort of timeline of consideration, if RCC were to say, they don't have enough information on this, they've got a lot of questions, they want to maybe table this, what are the chances that council would have already decided on this by the July RCC meeting? Like, is a vote from RCC urgent right now, or is this something that more time would be taken, and perhaps this could be tabled for the moment?
You know, it's a really good question. You know, public safety and Port of Public Works meets far more frequently than RCC does. Mm-hmm. Although it sounds like there's a lot of questions, so it sounds like this might not be voted on. I believe it's going back to council on June. It's supposed to go back on June 28th. So that's
and July 11th is the next RCC meeting. I think there's probably a good chance we'll have another RCC meeting before we vote on it, because I could imagine this getting pushed. That all being said, I've heard from, you know, it's Diane and Josh and Ron that there's general support for gardening in the terrace or doing something in the terrace. I just like, in the end, RCC is advisory to the council. So I can certainly, we could do one of two things. We could, I guess we could do three things. We could pass it and just say that we have some caveats, we have some concerns, which I can express, but that in general, we support it. And we hope that the other commissions kind of work out the kinks. We could defer it to council without a recommendation, but I can express at council that there was a general support, but there was some concern about not needing a permit, or what the liability is, and kind of express some of this conversation here, just verbally. Or we could defer it to the next meeting, and then with the knowing that we might not be able to vote on it before it comes. One way or another, I'll express this conversation. So
I would be really uncomfortable voting for this because there are just so many unknowns, and it's like giving somebody, this poor analogy, but it's the only one that comes to mind, a blank check. I just, I don't like that, but I like your idea, Gabriella, if you'll bring it to council, assuming everybody agrees with this, that we do support it. Some of us, maybe all of us, are questioning the need for a fee or an application to do it, but the general concept we like, and concerns about maybe traffic visibility and but I guess maybe that might be all, but would we allow somebody to put a rain garden in a terrace? And if we do, then we need to allow for that.
I just have a question for either Phil or Gabriella. Maybe Diane, you have history, but I was just kind of wondering why this is coming up before our committee. I mean, I can understand the potential rain garden part, but I mean, do we as a committee decide how many chickens somebody can have in their backyard? Is that the decisions that we make? I mean, to me, it's just something similar. I mean, where do we draw the line on what we review as a committee? And to me, this is like a public safety, a parks or, roadways department issue versus something for us.
I gathered from the Parks Commission discussion that this was why they ended up not voting. That they kind of passed this along to Board of Public Works and said that they were a more appropriate board commission to give a vote on this.
I mean, I feel I appreciate the opportunity to give feedback on a resolution like this, because I do think that there are components included in this that are very strongly related to this committee. I can also fully respect that I don't feel that we should be making a decision or necessarily, I think exactly what's happening here is what should happen, right? We should give feedback on why this is a benefit to the community, questions around how it could be implemented, from facilitating a rain garden to why does there have to be a fee? There's an equity conversation. I think this is exactly what we should be doing. I don't feel the need for this committee to say, yes, we're in favor, or we feel this is ready, right? I agree with the fact that the implementation needs to come down to other committees in the city at the end of the day. I mean, I want to see stuff like this, I'll be honest. This is the type of thing that I feel like we actually can have some input into a resource element, within our own city.
Yeah, but we don't have any input into the Parks Commission and all the things that they do. I mean, they do a whole lot of things that deal with plantings and vegetation stuff, but we don't get involved with that.
But is that all on parks land? I mean, this is public land all over town. I agree. I think there are things that we should collaborate on more. I feel like I've voiced that in the past, and I would hope that their purview keeps falling within parks. But if there's stuff that is more broad than that, then I would hope we're getting a chance to weigh in.
I mean, I think in general, I guess I think that obviously they erred on the side of being more inclusive in terms of the conversation, but I do think that the overall kind of background goal of, not a goal, but like the ability for people to get rid of turf grass for something else is, I think, something that relates to RCC. Maybe not in a very direct way, but in some ways, if you create plants, even if they're shorter profile that have deeper roots, that's better for stormwater control. We have pollinators, or we can facilitate pollinators with some of these plantings. There's just, and I understand what I take your point, Ron, that it's not very deeply related to RCC, but I kind of do appreciate that we get a chance to weigh in. But that being said, maybe the right move here is just defer it to council without a recommendation, and I can just express this conversation, and then just say that public works and public safety are the two ones that really need to kind of work it out and figure out before it goes to council.
Yeah.
Gabriella, would you also mention the fact that previous previous public works director already seems to have addressed the cul-de-sac issue? At least he certainly has in some neighborhoods.
That's a really good thing to know, Dan. I will make a note of that.
And there is a line item in here saying that all of those past things would be grandfathered in and not be purview to this new policy. So there is a line item in here.
My concern more is that there might be a double standard, the ones that existed and then the ones going forward. The ones obviously that exist have not caused a problem. So anyway.
I live in a cul-de-sac. I have native plantings on one side of my yard that separates my yard from the other person's yard. and it goes right down to the curb. And
Oh.
the veg, and the
And
vegetation.
what's your address?
What's that?
And what's your address?
So would I be grandfathered in, or do I have to go out there and cut everything back or cut it back to because I do have perennial grasses out there as well as other native plants. So, and to the cul-de-sac, and I didn't get the approval of the people in the cul-de-sac to plant it. Everybody loves it. They come over and look at it and they enjoy it, but I didn't get their approval. So, and I didn't know I would have to.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that you mentioned that, our landscaping goes all the way down to the curb also. We don't have sidewalks, so
So, yeah, we don't have.
I'm not giving you my address.
But I think you're right. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, this is complaint based, right? So one of the residents that brought it up, they had started putting in a garden and someone complained. And so they asked if we could make it so that they were allowed to put a garden. And this was the first proposal that came up in relation to that. So, but I think your point is well taken that there are people doing this around the city already. It's just they're not necessarily being complained. They're not getting a complaint, and therefore they can move forward with it even. Anyway.
Well, and also, Gabrielle, there are people who plant around their mailboxes.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going on. Let's not make a problem where there isn't one. Let's just allow people to continue what we're doing, and maybe that's where the change needs to come.
Mhm.
All right, so I guess I might make I'll change my motion to defer it to council without a recommendation.
But with our comments.
Yes.
Yes,
With
I
comments.
like that.
So you're making a motion, Gabriella?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll make a motion to defer this to council without a recommendation, but I'll need a second for that.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor, aye? Say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay? Okay, approved. So what do we do with the first motion then?
I
That was
guess-
just for discussion. That just allows us to discuss it. So this finishes it.
Yeah,
Aye.
that motion supersedes the previous one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay, good. All right. So we're done with that agenda item then.
Yeah, we're 20 minutes behind schedule.
Okay. All right. Well, most importantly, the next agenda item 4B is the introduction of our new environmental engineer, Ben Schulte. Welcome to the committee, Ben, and welcome to the good conversations that we had so far. We have plenty of these, so we're glad you're here to join us. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Again, my name is Ben Schulte. I'm coming from Ruckert Melke and TRC. Those are the two previous employers that I've worked at. So my background is primarily in stormwater. So that's, doing watershed studies, EMP design, erosion control inspections and enforcement. Let's see. Got a lot of experience in private development as well, and then just a lot of general municipal stuff. Ruckert Melke was a municipal firm, so we kind of got a little bit of experience in more than just the stormwater stuff as well there. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. I've been looking at some of the previous initiatives that RCC has been a part of, and yeah, it looks like we're going to be able to get a lot of stuff done and got a great group of people here.
Well, thank you and welcome aboard. I guess I may ask the question for either for you or Phil, is that who will be kind of leading the city part of this? Will this be you, Ben, in terms of putting together the agendas and all that?
I think kind of as we move forward, we'll kind of transition to that,
Okay.
or I'll transition into that role, maybe after a few meetings or so.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So July will be the sustainability focused meeting. So that'll still be me leading that, but I'll kind of try to work with Ben a little bit on just sort of walking him through how I put that agenda together, so that by August he'll be able to take over a bit more, since I'll be going on parental leave for the September meeting. We'll need Ben to to be able to lead that one. So we'll hope to have a transition by the fall.
Okay.
Hey,
So
Ben, I
again,
have a couple of questions. Did you, when you were working with Rupert Milky, did you do any Fitchburg projects? Because I know the city has worked with them.
Yeah, so I was involved with the Lake Barney project, more
Okay.
so on the Village of Oregon side and with kind of that portion of the project. But yeah, let's see. Curry Court, we had submitted on that project,
Yep.
but didn't get it, obviously. But yeah, really those two projects are kind of the closest I've gotten into Fitchburg. Did a lot of work in the city of Madison and some of the other surrounding communities. But I think those two are a little bit of work at Thermo Fisher, just for some of their site improvement projects that they've had in the past. But yeah, I think that's
Good.
it.
Well, Lake Barney is huge, so at least you got great background on that. My other
Yeah.
question is, do you know Rick Eilerson?
I haven't met him,
Okay.
but he's someone I'm planning on reaching out to, and just to kind of get some wisdom from him. Of course, he had this role for many years before myself and Claudia.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Ron,
Ben.
do we want to do some very quick introductions just so he can learn a little
Oh,
bit
sure.
more?
Yep,
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good point. Thanks, Chris. I'll go ahead and start off. I'm Ron French. I'm environmental ecologist by training. I have my own environmental consulting firm. It's a better known small business here in Pittsburgh. And so I've done a lot of environmental work for over the last 30 something years. So that's kind of my background.
Okay.
Diane?
Oh, I think I'm the senior member in terms of longevity on the commission. I'm a CPA. I can't remember when I joined, but it had to do with an interest. Mike Rupiper had your position. I don't know if you've heard his name, but my original interest was in recycling and why contractors weren't recycling. And he invited me to join RCC, and I was chair for a couple of terms. I guess that's it. I've learned a lot on this commission. I've really enjoyed it, and they can't seem to get rid of me.
You're
Great.
too knowledgeable, Diane.
Yeah, they're gonna get rid of you. Chris?
So I'm Chris Jamison. So I've been on the RCC since 2008. I had a couple year stint where I was off when I had a young child. But I stayed on kind of as a community outreach sustainability person. So kind of organizing our sustainability events. So since 2010, I've chaired that subcommittee to RCC. And so we have, and this goes back to the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, that we were going to, reach out and do more sustainability events as a community. And so that's what we've done. And we did quite a few, probably almost quarterly and sometimes even more frequently than that leading up to the pandemic. But we've been kind of slow getting out of the gates, but I think we're starting to get things rolling again on that front. But by day, I'm a geological engineer for SCS Engineers here in town. And so my main focuses are environmental compliance and then also landfill engineering.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Rick. Josh?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Josh Knackard. I'm one of the newer members of the committee. I have a background in life science research, neuroscience, stem cell research, but also lots of side projects as a science writer in environmental and sustainable topics. And yeah, have really enjoyed my time so far on the committee and getting engaged in not only the local matters of Fitchburg, but especially from a sustainability lens.
Great.
Thanks, Josh. And Gabriella?
Hi, I am the Alder representative to the commission. My represent District 2. I first term started in April 2020, and I just was reelected this past April. And my background's in geology. My day job nowadays, I work in nonprofit fundraising. But
Okay.
but in terms of the work I do on council, I have a real focus on climate change and sustainability initiatives and also environmental responsibility. So a lot of the amendments I put in for CIP and budget are related to those items. So I work quite extensively with RCC on those. And I also worked quite extensively with Claudia in the past. So I'm really happy to have you on board in this position and look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Well, nice to meet everyone.
Nice
And then
to-
we do have two other members who weren't able to make it to the meeting this evening. So we got Will Bussey as our latest addition. He's a local physical therapist. I believe he had done quite a bit of volunteering for some of the RCC like waterway cleanup events and things in the past. So had a significant interest in this kind of work apart from his day job. Kim Warkentin is operations manager and youth education director at the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association. So a couple more members that you'll hopefully get to meet in July.
Yep. Great.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda item is 4C. Is the I guess Phil, this is for you, the RCC meeting change request.
Yeah, so since we're running a little behind, I'll try to keep this relatively brief, but Scott Yarber with Fact TV reached out to me and he mentioned that there is right now it's not a big deal while we're meeting over Zoom, but there is a once quarterly scheduling conflict with the Housing Committee. So the Housing Committee meets the third month of every quarter, so March, June, September, and December on the second Monday at I think 5 to 7 o'clock. So right now it's not a problem. Once we get back to the point where we're meeting regularly, it could be a potential conflict. And he wanted to ask about whether RCC would be interested and able to either change the meeting date entirely to a time when there isn't a conflict, or at least that one Monday, it'd actually be 3 times a year because RCC doesn't meet in December. But at least for March and June and September, if RCC wanted to keep the same date, at least shift the start time to 7:15 for those 3 months. Scott did just remind me, first Wednesday is the best available date right now, the first Wednesday of every month.
I just want to remind you that we chose, we've been meeting on Mondays since before I joined RCC. And the reason that we picked this particular Monday in the week and the month was so that we could address anything before council met and we didn't get bypassed, which happened, if you remember, when we had to reschedule a meeting a couple months ago. My question is, if we already go till 9 o'clock at night. So if we started at 7:15, we wouldn't get done till almost 10. What if this housing committee started at 4:30 and finished their meeting only lasts 2 hours? Could they start a half hour earlier?
I could certainly ask Scott about that. I know he had reached out to them initially, he said, and they said that, due to their schedules, they can't get off any earlier than that. This was the only time that works for them. It is true that our meetings tend to go till 9 o'clock. We could definitely put in more of an effort those 3 months to keep the meetings a little bit shorter. So we did, we did have 8 meetings rather than 10 just 2 years ago. And, with 2 fewer meetings, we weren't regularly running until 9:45. So I think, I think there would probably be a way to make it work if we started at 7:15. Yeah, I know we did. It was not just council, but also alignment with Board of Public Works schedule, because we do consider a number of things that come across their desk as well. But this is certainly something we can also have a continuing conversation about. Like I mentioned. Sorry, go ahead.
One other aspect. I'll be honest. I don't intend to attend in person anytime soon. This is facilitated way nicer for somebody like myself who has young kids. We only have a couple of people who attend regularly. Does this have to happen in chambers? Is there a secondary room that would still allow us to have 1 to 2 people attend in person and provide comment?
So we do have the Genie Ceiling Room 204. That's where the RCC previously met. I think the concern right now is if we were all to meet in the ceiling room, there just isn't enough space for us, especially given the distance that we're trying to keep now. So if the whole committee were to meet in person, we really would need the council chambers. As long as we're still meeting on Zoom, I think this is fine.
How many people are in the housing committee?
The housing committee, 10. Thanks, Scott.
Can we ask Scott? I thought that our Fact TV can't run two meetings through Zoom at the same time. I thought that was a more recent thing with the. Scott, is that not true? Okay.
So one just basically isn't aired live then? Got it.
Phil, our meetings used to go even longer, and we made a concerted effort to get them done by 9 as as a courtesy to all members. But
I recall.
There were times when they were, before you were with the city, that they would be 10 and 10:30. I really, and I think now our discussions tend to get muted a little bit because we're under time pressure, as you have already seen from today's meeting. I would really, I don't want to start at 7:15. I don't know if the housing can move to a different Monday and keep their same time. But I don't want to start at 7:15 and end at 9:30.
I do believe the other Mondays are also conflicts currently, and that's why we were asked about moving to the first Wednesday rather than a different Monday.
And that would be after the council meets. So that's the reason we didn't do Wednesdays to begin with.
I mean, is this something we have to vote on? I mean, I'm in favor.
No, so there's not an item to vote on right now. This is really just a discussion about the feasibility of this. It's something that we can keep exploring. I can keep talking with Scott about it. Yeah, we are kind of, this is the best time, and RCC has already moved within the last year and a half. It has been the best time for them. It's the best time for housing. So we'll have to figure something out at some point. And maybe, I can't predict what that'll look like, but at least wanted to bring this up and take the temperature.
Okay.
We may have more ongoing discussion about it just to make sure we find something that works best for everybody. But it's good to get your feedback on this.
Okay. Well, thanks for bringing it up, Phil. All right, let's move on to item 4D, which is the fall recycling event location. Phil, hopefully you can keep this short.
Yep, so this is another request. Michelle Westfall with Resource Solutions. So they handled the electronics recycling at our spring and fall recycling events. Michelle asked before this spring event, and she requested again coming into the fall event that we're going to have in, I think it's September. I don't have the date in front of me. She was wondering if there's another location that we could move the event to. So we've, for several years now, we've been holding this event, as you know, at the Civic Campus, kind of around, I guess, Ben, you don't know. So in the spring and fall, we do an event for Fitchburg residents where they can bring sensitive documents to have shredded by Pelletieri, who's our waste and recycling contractor. And then we also sign an event contract with another local company, Resource Solutions, that does electronics recycling. And people can bring things like printers and old laptops and vacuum cleaners, like electronics to pay a small fee to have recycled. And then there's also a med drop at the police station for expired, unused, unneeded medications. So usually we put up several different signs. We try to have a flow of traffic. We'll have the paper recycling over in kind of the main employee sort of staff parking lot by Lacey Road. And then the electronic recycling is down in the lower lot behind the police parking. So generally it works pretty well. I think we have cleaned it up pretty well over the last couple events. There were still a few concerns from Resource Solutions about just back up onto Lacey Road, and a few residents expressed concerns about these signs being a little difficult to follow and the traffic flow maybe not being the most intuitive. So Michelle just really wanted to make sure that we were solid that this is the best location we've got for it, and she just wanted to see if there's any other location we could look at. I know we've discussed McKee Farms Park in the past. The concern was that we didn't want to take parking away from a pretty central, important, popular park in Fitchburg for an entire Saturday morning, twice a year. McGaw Park, we've discussed, there's a lot of parking availability there. It's even less central than the Civic Campus is for the city, and I feel like traffic flow could be a little complicated there. But that's just kind of wanted to open that for discussion and see if anybody thought that any other places would be viable. I think if not, we'll just stick with this and keep working on ways to make sure it's as smooth as possible.
My gut instinct is that the parks are not workable. I mean, I just can't, there's only one way in and out of those, and it would be a nightmare. I don't know if the Lacey Road is an issue, like, is there a way that we can have people come down, what's that road that parallels Fish Hatchery?
Research Park Drive.
Seminole?
Yeah, is there a way to like direct traffic so that people line up there rather than lining up on Lacey Road? I don't know how that would work, but I mean, that would be I feel like the best way to.
I think people naturally come in whatever way is most convenient to them. So they're either approaching from Lacey or from Research Park Drive, and then we try to use signs to kind of direct them to the proper entrance. Now, this spring I thought was the best that we've had, and we had Aldra Radafrada at the Lacey Road entrance, keeping people from crowding up the library parking lot. And then we have signs over at the Research Park Drive entrance. And that's maybe one where we could have a volunteer as well to kind of direct people that way. I think that a few better placed and maybe larger signs would be what we need. And no matter where we go, some people are going to go the wrong way down a one-way street.
Yeah.
And you can't do much about that.
We heard the least complaints this last spring, and to me, the bigger hinge point is 2 payment methods. We could move this anywhere in town, and if they had one person on payment, it doesn't matter how many entrances and exits we have. That's our linchpin right now. And so when we had 2 payments, 2 lines last spring, that's why this moved the way it did. And so honestly, you should go back to them and say that was the best thing we could do. Because I agree with Gabrielle that a single entrance point at either of those locations is going to be nightmarish, and we are going to have residents just furious at us.
Yeah.
And I think this time, so in the fall, we had several backups onto Lacey Road, and that proved pretty problematic. People were really frustrated. If in the fall, I think in the spring, we had 1 backup on the Lacey Road, and really what would have fixed it is just, Kim does a great job directing traffic on that Lacey entrance. If she moves 100 feet farther away from Lacey, so that whatever car she's stopping is a couple more car lengths in, I don't think we would have even had the backup on the Lacey. And I think that would, I again, just wanted to kind of take the temperature of RCC and just make sure that there's nothing I'm missing before I got back to Michelle about this.
Yeah, and remember the first time we did it last fall was that was the first time in about a year or 2. So a lot of people had bent up or a lot of saved up material to get rid of. So hopefully the springtime was like a typical event for us.
Hope
The
so.
people that were most irritated for me were the people that got into the electronics line that just wanted to do the med drop, and therefore were stuck in this line. You couldn't get. But what's interesting is we always advertise the med drop, and it makes it sound like med drop only exists on these 2 days, when in fact around year round.
Yeah, right.
At the police station. So it seems like, I don't know, maybe we should just be communicating that if you want to do med drop, come. And it's like the day they shouldn't come. The one day they shouldn't do med drop because it's the least convenient day to do it. I don't know, just something to think about for like, maybe we should message med drop year round better all year, and then have the focus be the shred and the electronics.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
And if we could find those 2 magical Saturdays when nothing is going on at the community center, and once people go through the paper line, they can just go right through that community center lot and kind of zipper merge into the electronics recycling. That was the other one, is people who want to do 2 or 3 of the different things, they've got to wait in a couple different lines, and that can, I know that causes some frustrations, but that's going to happen no matter where we do this, because you can't get everyone to start in the same line. Okay, thanks. I think that's enough for me to go on and get back to Michelle. And I have every expectation that we'll be at Civic Campus again in the fall and moving forward until,
All right.
Forever.
Okay, thanks, Phil. To keep moving on here, we'll go to item 4E, the sustainability plan RFP status. For Phil, you've attached a draft RFP that hopefully everyone had a chance to look at.
Yeah, so finally making some progress on this, been able to spend a little time here. I've been in contact with some peers from a couple different communities in the area. I worked with Wade a little bit, kind of talking about logistics of this, and worked fairly heavily off of an RFP that he had put together for a previous project a couple of years ago, and have kind of a first rough draft thrown together for an RFP for us to get a contractor in to help lead a sustainability plan for Fitchburg. This was in the packet, so I don't want to, really belabor like going through everything in detail, but just kind of see if anything stuck out to anybody. What I did want to call it is there's definitely a couple areas that still need some cleanup. I haven't changed the table of contents at all from what I copied in from Wade's plan. And the scope definitely still needs to be fleshed out a bit here in section 1.2D, the actual tasks associated with collecting data and creating the plan. I want to be a little bit more clear with what we expect here. The sort of balance I'm trying to strike here is that I want to be clear about what the city would like to see in a sustainability plan, but I also really don't want to railroad anybody. I want to make sure that people can be creative and flexible and let us know how they would create something. I don't want to tell them, well, you have to create a plan with this title that has these 6 different specific sections in it, because I really want to know what any bidders that would come to us, how they'd like to envision this. Somebody may want a sustainability plan, somebody else may call it a climate resiliency plan, and those may manifest in 2 very different ways. So I don't want to lock people in too much. So kind of trying to find a way to provide some detail here for what we'd like to see without being overly restrictive on that. Yeah.
I just have a few comments.
Sure.
As a consultant, when I look at an RFP, a lot of the things I look at, how extensive of an RFP proposal do they want? What are the insurance requirements and things like that? And I noticed in here that you're talking about the proposal should be, at the maximum 40 pages in length. And this is just a $25,000 contract. So to me, it seems like a lot of material that you would have to review through. I mean, if they can't get it, if they can't get their message across in 20 pages, I would worry. And also it might scare off some consultants. Also, I think there's 6 pages for costing. I mean, we should be able to get that down to 1 page to keep it simple for the contract for the consultant. And also on the insurance requirement, there's a $5 million requirement. I don't know if you could go to that, but that just seems really stringent.
So what I will say is basically everything starting with section 2 onward. This is all stuff that's going to have to be worked out with our legal team and with internal staff. I've thrown this all. Basically, I took all of this from Wade had thrown together for a neighborhood hub RFP that required a lot of detail. There were insurance requirements due to there is construction work involved with the neighborhood hub.
Okay.
So there are things in there that the details, and I'll definitely make those take notes on that and make changes there. But these are things that are going to have to worked out internally. This is just copied directly from a hub RFP.
Okay. Yeah. Other than that, there was you got a good start here. So.
Okay.
No, I missed the beginning because I had to move to a different cottage with lost power, and I'm just running on an emergency generator right now. But
all right.
We're up in the North Woods. Initially, and you may have talked about this, so I apologize if you did, but initially we're just asking for the municipal part of the sustainability plan, correct? Because this write-up led me to believe we're asking them for everything.
So this is something that kind of needs to be determined how we want to ask this. What we know is that we have $25,000 budgeted for this year. Given the one-time funding we got from ARPA and from the closure of TID District 4, there's additional funding in the kind of sustainability bucket of funds that were included in that spending plan. And my understanding was potentially another $25,000. So my initial plan, and this could be tweaked depending on talking with city staff. My initial plan was that essentially the way this would be written was this plan will have $25,000 and up to 50. And so essentially ask bidders, tell us what you can do at those 2 different levels. And it might be that for $25,000, you can only focus on municipal actions. And for 50,000, you can get into more community engagement and how we get all of Fitchburg involved in this. Let's go ahead.
Can we ask them for what we want, and they can come up with a proposal? I mean, can we do it in like part A and part B? Part A is municipal, part B is the community, and what they're, and kind of what we're looking for in each, and what their estimates or bids would be for each of those, rather than saying this is the pot of money we have. Because I mean, let's say I think you talked to a community that they were able to get the whole thing done for 25,000. But if we say we have 25,000 for this and it could go up to 50,000, how many people are not going to go for the like 45 to 50,000? I would also suggest, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to chat with you guys, but
sure.
I would also suggest that we ask them for samples of plans that they've done for other communities, so we have an idea of, maybe you've already done that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I've got that in here, their relevant experience approach. So with kind of the materials that we're asking them to include in their proposal, I'll definitely have in there asking them for examples of plans that they've written in the past.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Hey, Diane, if we lose you, do we still have a quorum?
Well, let's see.
We do.
You have, yeah, you have Josh, Claudia, Josh, Gabriella,
Okay.
and Chris,
Okay.
and you. So yes, you do.
We don't have any more items to vote on, I don't think, so.
Oh,
But you can't conduct business without a quorum. That's what we've been told.
I'm really certain you can discuss things. I don't think you can vote.
Well, in the past, we were told we couldn't even meet without a quorum. So if we didn't have a quorum show up for our meeting, we had to cancel we had to stop the meeting. That would be worth asking, but that's what we were told.
But yeah, in response to your first point, Diane, that's one that I want to consider as well, that approach, whether we tell them here's how much money there is versus just say, here are the two things we'd like included, tell us what you think each one would cost. The two things that I'm concerned about there is that if somebody thinks we might only have $5,000 or $10,000 and they undersell what they can do, and we maybe don't go with them because we haven't actually gotten the full picture of what they're capable of, or another firm that maybe could do a phenomenal job for 40,000, but they come in and write for 100, and we know we can't afford that. So do we now get scared away by the price tag with one potential option because we didn't let them know that there was any kind of a limit? And maybe once we see proposals, we would get into responses with these bidders, and we could get into negotiations and see how they would scale things up or down. I certainly understand your concerns that if you give the dollar amount up front, it might not be the most strategic way to go. But that is part of my consideration if we were to simply to not give them a budget at all.
Do we have a ceiling, Phil? Is there a maximum that we can spend?
Right now, my understanding is 50, but I don't have that confirmed for sure. That's my best understanding, but I need to get that verified.
Could we just ask them to detail the scope of their, of what they would do, and tell people that we will not consider any RFPs over X dollars?
That would be a third option. Yep.
Phil, is this a cost-based or quals-based proposal?
Both.
Okay.
I can come up with a fourth option if you give me some time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So there is also a criteria breakdown. Where was this one? Selection criteria here. So we're looking at experience, we're looking at quals, completeness of their approach, but also, their ability to meet the timeline, their ability to meet our, their fees are in there as an important consideration.
Yeah, that's why it had me. I was wondering about the cost part of it.
Yep, that's in there.
Where's that at?
Right at number 6 here. It's kind of hidden.
Well, that's the fee. That's their hourly rate, right?
So yeah, that can be broken out a little bit more, fees and cost proposal. But yeah, we do want to consider both of those things. It's kind of the best bang for our buck here. Ideally it is just quals based. Hopefully nobody's going to come in here with, you know, it's Fitchburg, it's not Madison, it's not Milwaukee. Hopefully nobody's going to come in with just like dollar signs in their eyes. They're all going to give us a very doable proposal, and we can just go with the one that we feel best meets our objectives, and everyone is within the cost considerations that we're using. So I think that ideally the qualifications, the experience, the proposal itself is going to be more important. Somebody could disqualify themselves by having a budget that's just way out of line with what we can do.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to let the consultant know how much is available out there for them. But I only thought we had 25,000 that was approved by the council.
That is correct. So again, Alder Gerhardt, let me know if I am speaking out of line here, but my understanding, we have 25,000 explicitly approved for the sustainability plan. There is another bucket of funding for sustainability projects broadly that could include the sustainability plan. It likely will include the sustainability plan, but it hasn't yet been earmarked for any specific project by council. And so that would still have to require a council vote to get any additional funding earmarked for this.
So just to add on to that, so the 25,000 is in the 2023 budget. So we 100% have that money. The additional money is through the ARPA TID spending plan. And there was not actually, that was included in the mayor's original proposal and then was adopted with the final vote, but there was not actually a line item. So I think the idea was that it'd be at least under 25,000, but it is somewhat vague. But that can be allocated at any time. At this point, there are several projects that we allocated a couple two meetings ago. We just went ahead and allocated money in this budget for some of the higher priority projects. So if we do get an RFP out, something comes back, we can allocate that money. And there is flexibility. It's just a matter of what the, what the mayor will bring.
And I would imagine it's a consideration if we were to, if we were to have a contract signed today, it would be easier to get it up to $75,000 than if we were to have a contract signed in February. Just because the sooner we get this done, the more overall funding is available. Mm-hmm. Now, a consideration in this, of course, is going to be, as I mentioned, going on parental leave. So I want to make sure that I'm here when we're going through interviews. I want to make sure I'm here once we begin the process of gathering data and those initial meetings with the bidder. I'll be taking a couple months off, and so there's going to be a point in there where hopefully I've at least gotten ahead of things enough and can kind of designate somebody else on city staff who's able to answer any questions they may have. But that will create a little bit of a hiccup in terms of there may be a period where things slow down a little bit. And, I'm hoping that we can get a bidder selected and the contract signed before I end up going out on leave. And we just got to figure out that timing exactly, just to make sure that we don't have too much of a disruption.
What's your timeline for getting the RFP out?
Ideally end of June, and then that would give us until the end of July for bidders to return responses.
Yeah.
And then we'd have August to go through interviews and contracting. But again, need to check with our attorney on what her availability is through the summer and kind of other staff that would be involved. And that's my hope is end of June, and I just need to really need to work through a couple of these details that haven't been finalized in the plan yet.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, let's move on. Item 4F, Dane County Trash Lab at the Fitchburg Public Library. Again, you're on, Phil.
All right. So this is, I guess, the first of two successive months where it's a sustainability focused RCC meeting. So I got a couple emails from Minda Maurer, a new outreach librarian with the Fitchburg Public Library. She said on Tuesday, July 12th, the Fitchburg Library is going to be hosting the Dane County Trash Lab. If you're not familiar with the Trash Lab, this is a project of kind kind of partnership between the Madison Children's Museum and the Dane County Department of Waste and Renewables. It's a mobile, well, I can just pull this up instead of describing it, reading it. It's this really cool converted trailer that gets hauled around, and they have exhibits inside. They've got different graphics and hands-on things for students that come visit this trash lab to kind of learn about waste and recycling and where trash goes and how things are recycled, things like that. Just a really, really fun mobile exhibit to give kids a little bit more of a hands-on experience with waste and recycling. So the Fitchburg Public Library is hosting this trash lab on July 12th. Minda asked if the city of Fitchburg would like to have a table at this event to provide additional Fitchburg specific information. So what she did stress is this is an elementary focused event, but a lot of these kids will have their parents there with them. So, we were kind of talking about where the balance would be between having something that's more school-aged kid focused for a city table versus just having kind of handouts and information about Fitchburg's waste and recycling, the recycling drop-off site over by the Public Works building, maybe have a few copies of Fitchburg's recycling guide to hand out, things like that. I think that if this is something that I had 2 days to put this together, I could come up with, all right, we're going to have a few materials, and I can sit there at a table for a couple of hours to talk to anybody about trash and recycling in Fitchburg. What I was curious about is whether anybody in the RCC would also be interested in helping to work on this, and if you have any experience with doing this type of table at an event. I spent 2 years doing environmental education and did a lot of stuff like this. It's been over a decade, and I'm a little bit rusty on it.
Phil, how long does this last, the trash event?
I believe this is from 2 to 4.
Chris, I'd like your thoughts on this, but when I read this, I thought we could use the bring your own bag display. And yes, in answer to your question, Phil, we have had table displays actually several times, and we have the stuff that we put together for bring your own bag about plastic bags and plastic waste. The pictures for that, if we can locate those at City Hall, I think that would be a great thing. We borrow the trifold from CETA, Mike Zimmerman's area, and set it up. I think, Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that we could definitely, do bring your own bags. I mean, we have Kim, who does outreach on, youth education. So she could probably come up with some ideas. We've done our past events. We have, I think, old display items from our old trash, recycling, and composting relays that we've done at the school. So we could potentially pull that in the fold. I know personally that I'm not going to be around that date. I'm going to be out of the state that day. But would be happy to help with the prep and ideas to kind of come up with, a game plan for our table. I just won't be able to be there that day, and it's too bad because I'm pretty familiar with the trash lab and everything that goes along with that. So I'm excited about this event. I think it's one that we should support and have a table at. And
so it looks like it's just from 2 to 3. So it's just 1 hour that okay. This event will be going on in the library's parking lot.
Actually, if we do we call it the BYOB event, the only work that's involved is making sure we've got the trifold and finding out where the laminates are. I mean, there would be basically no other work. And then if Chris wants to pull in some things and Kim wants to pull some things, I think we could pull this together with maybe an hour Zoom call and it would be done.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I think having something like that, and then just maybe even we could do a sign up for the Green E-News. We could provide some information on things like the video that RCC put together last year, or was it 2 years ago, for that recycling drop-off site? I think that was last year. But yeah, I think, Kevin, that might be nice to have that mix of information. But yeah, so I can reach out, I guess, to Diane, Chris, and Kim about a Zoom call to kind of plan this out.
Good.
Would anybody else be interested in joining at the risk of too many cooks?
Before we
Sounds great.
move on, and on the a related subject, I noticed in the Star that the library is hosting MG&E for an electric vehicle event the day after our committee of the whole presentation. In the past, RCC has been included on that and marketed it, but I guess for some reason that didn't happen this year. But anyway, just want to point out to everybody, if you're interested, it's at the library. There's something in the Star about it.
Yep, that's July 23.
June. I think it's
I can
June.
pull.
I think it's June.
Oh, thanks. June.
Good point.
That is correct.
Yeah.
June 23. I can show this real quick. So yeah, I got this from Dave Benfrada with MG&E.
Yeah, and I just got stuff from him too, Diane. So we probably should have, got it put onto the agenda so we could talk about it a little bit more. But the game plan is to market. I think Phil and I were both copied on that from Dave, right? With Rebecca Swanson. So he did just start something this past week with us, and Dave mentioned it to me like a week and a half ago at another event.
Kind of short notice.
It is kind of short notice. We've had,
Yeah.
quite a few of them in the past. But I think we could certainly go through and market it still. But it is coming up in just 10 days. So it is coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to get on it.
Yeah, we do have that noticed in on Fitchburg's social media pages. And there's a notify me alert that I sent out. And I think it's on the website calendar as well.
Mm.
And will you include that in the green e-blast?
Yeah, I haven't sent one of those out in a couple months. I'm hoping to put one out for June and July next week. And if I'm able to get that done, then I'll include this for sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Phil. All right, let's move on to agenda items 5A, the old business. Just invasive species event recap. We had an invasive species, our annual event was held, last week or before last? And I thought it was very successful, even though we kind of had some little glitches here and there, but it was a good turnout. I think I counted over 42 people there. I don't know if anybody else got any other numbers, but it was a large turnout at McGaw Park. Although the location where everybody met wasn't where I had planned everybody to meet, but it was a good place to do it. But again, if we immediate these things, we need to make sure we reserve the shelter. So that's why I was kind of meeting in the parking lot. I didn't know if that shelter was reserved or not. And to find out it was, so we had to relocate at 6 o'clock. But again, it was a great turnout. We had Matt Walworth, who's an invasive species expert from the Upper Sugar River Association, come give an overview of invasive species. He had all kinds of handouts. He had some demonstrations or example plants. And then we went on a tour with him. Anna Healy was also there, our urban forester and naturalist. And they were there to share their thoughts and approaches to controlling and managing invasive species. We also had, I want to thank Chris and his folks for putting together, and Kim, the giveaways that we had, a variety of different things that were from different local vendors. I think that was really good. I think it was well received. Everybody seemed to be excited about, potentially winning something. Maybe it was the free pizza that got the large turnout, but I think it was really good. I know Christian went through a lot to get that pizza delivered or have it come to us. So I like your lessons learned email that you sent out. So hopefully we can, for the next annual event or the next event we have, we can take these things in consideration. I know it probably should have been more specific in terms of the location, the parking lot, and I probably should have checked about the shelter to see if that was available, because I think the shelter is a good place to start the meeting. So anybody else who was there? I mean, Chris and Diane, you both were there.
We had RCC held an invasive species forum. Oh gosh, maybe 15 years ago. It was at City Hall. Actually, it was in the community center, and the room was overflowing with people. They had to bring in more chairs, and it was extremely popular. So I think this topic in general is just really a popular topic.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good idea. And I, lessons learned. We'll do things differently. Usually, community outreach takes care of reserving what we need and organizing everything. So you don't, it kind of gets you off the hook for doing that, Ron. But like I said, lessons learned, and it was very well attended. I agree. There were at least 40 people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the future, like if we do have like, another RCC member that's not on our community outreach committee kind of takes the lead on that, we could, bring you into like a community outreach meeting so we could kind of talk through all the details a little bit more and make sure we have, kind of everything covered that we need to talk to about the speaker, and just all the things that we've learned over the year that, I think, started to kind of, since we haven't done too many events, it kind of didn't come back into my mind until we were actually having an event. And I'm like, oh yeah, we should probably think a little bit more about timing on these things, because we want to keep, one of the goals of our events is to keep them, at a short duration. For those that, most of you weren't around, Diane maybe remembers, but when I started off as a community outreach subcommittee, we had some, I don't know if I had too big of aspirations or what, but we did like a green expo and a green transportation expo. And we had actually set up over at Promega, and we had people from the community came in and set up booths and talked about, just how they were trying to be green in our community. And then we had a program and we had a dinner after, like we had all kinds of things. So the thing went on for 2.5, 3 hours, and, we had some really great content in that second to the third hour, but people's eyes were glazing over, people were taking off from the event, and you really start to lose your impact after that. And so we learned really early with these events that we want to be very respectful of people's time, and so we've always tried to keep them, and we've had success keeping them at kind of that hour to hour 15, hour and 30 minutes max is where we try to keep those events in kind of a sweet spot, to be respectful of people's time, but have good content for that time that we do have people engaged.
Good. Well, thank you, Chris and Diane. So yep, again, it was a well-attended event, and look forward to our next annual event. Okay, if there's no other discussion, let's move on to item 5B, the June 22nd RCC presentation to Committee of the Whole. I don't know if you want to bring up, Phil, that presentation. Chris, Phil, and Diane and I put together the presentation to the committee. We went over it last week and kind of finalized the slides. I think we got 19 slides for the presentation. I don't know if, how much time did we have for this time slot here? So we got 10 minutes to talk about it. I mean, we can go through the slides briefly, or let's to talk about the slides, but I think overall it's a good presentation. It's trimmed down. And if we want to run through them real quick, we can do that.
Sure.
So, start off with talk about the goals of the committee. What do we do? What are we here for? Talk about our responsibilities. Who are the commission members? If there's anything wrong here on your title, please let us know. But I think I've captured everything correctly in terms of what people told me. Okay, next slide. Talk about our focus for 2022. These are the 5 different categories that we're going to be focusing on. Talk a little bit, highlight the importance of the Swan Creek Monitoring Station and why the city of Fitchburg is involved in it. Next slide. Talk about some of our recent community engagements events, which the tree diversity meeting that we had last year, and the invasive species one, the shred, e-cycle med drop events that we have twice a year. So to share those with them. Talk about also reducing light pollution. We've discussed this several times in our meetings over the last couple of months. Talk about, what some of these other things that we do. We'll lead the annual waterway cleanup. Also talk about, the program that Chris and Kim are working on in terms of the Aldo Leopold Elementary School Waste Reduction Recycling Program. Then we jump into the sustainability plan, the benefits of it. Next slide, and Fitchburg's commitments to sustainability. the process of developing a Fitchburg sustainability plan, what we go through, what encompasses a sustainability plan, the resources that will be needed to develop that plan, both on the municipal and operation side, and a timeline and a budget that we have for developing the sustainability plan. And then just kind of wrap it up with some of the benefits to the city residents on the RCC. And then touch lightly, just a reminder of the projects that we're going to be doing or will be doing. And then just open it up to questions and answers. Any thoughts, Gabrielle? What do you think? You think, is it too long, or?
Yeah, I looked through it. I think it looks great.
Okay.
I think it really reflects what we talk about and what we do. And honestly, committee of the whole presentations have gone very long, so I have every confidence that you guys will move through this, and I think it'll be great.
Okay.
I mean, I share with the council what we talk about. Obviously we don't always vote on that many things, but I share regularly in committee. But I think it's really great to see the whole thing all together, and to see some of your faces. I think it'll be great. And this committee is honestly like one of the most extraordinary ones. We do a lot above and beyond what is just on paper what we're supposed to do. So I think it's a great opportunity for you all to share that specifically, and hopefully get some praise from the council for the great work you all are doing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And just quickly on our timing, and just kind of for other RCC members that aren't presenting, that they have the opportunity to go to this event. We encourage you to go if you're available, to come and just watch your fellow RCC members present, but also be there and available for potential questions. So if that works for you, great. And also it's an opportunity to meet some of our council members and the mayor.
Yeah, so that's June 22nd at 7:30 p.m.
I just want to add to that this is a great opportunity for RCC to get feedback from the council, and have an exchange. And so even though we're not all presenting, I encourage all the members to be there. Gabrielle, I had one question. Have you shared RCC's annual report with the council?
Trying to think. No, I don't think so.
I think Ron, when you send this for the packet for the committee of the whole, maybe you should include the annual report. I mean, we're not going to talk about that specifically in detail unless they have questions. I don't think we'll talk about it at all. But one of the reasons to prepare that, not only for our reference, but also to let council know what's been going on. So maybe you could include the final version of that, please.
Okay, who shares this with the committee of the whole presentation? Is that city staff or is it me?
No, it goes to Gabrielle. Do you know which person, or maybe Phil?
You can send it to Chad Brecklin, the administrator, and it'd be great for it to include it in the packet. I love when people include the slides and everything in advance in the packet. So there's plenty of lead time. So
usually it goes to like a city clerk or something. You want it right to Chad?
Or you can send it to Tracy. I honestly, I think it'll make it its way. I'm not sure who puts together the packet.
Phil, can you help us with that?
When do we have to have it to Tracy or whoever we send it to?
The agendas, it's typically done like 5 days before. So
that's not too. That's today.
Agendas are usually posted the Thursday prior, so that would be. Yeah, that would be this Thursday, I guess.
So we have to have it to her before Thursday, correct?
Yes.
But if it's not, it's okay if it's not in the packet. It is nice. It's a nice to have, but I mean, if it doesn't make it in the packet, that's okay.
Well, if it's all done, Ron, and you can just send it off tomorrow, that would be great. And then there's plenty of time to get it in the packet and they can look at it, and I think that'll help with the dialogue.
Okay.
I'm just sending a chat to you all. I'm moving back to the original cottage because I'm sitting on the floor here and the power's back on. So I'll join you shortly.
Okay.
Sounds
Ron,
good.
You might want to double check the time because committee of the whole starts
Yeah.
at 7 p.m.
7 p.m.?
So typically the presentations start on the hour. So 7:30 seems like an unusual start time, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not right.
That's what I had from Randy's email. I looked, so
Okay, then that's fine. I trust that.
but I'll double check. So
Double check that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, Gabrielle, so how much time do we have, like including the presentation and Q&A? Is that 45 minutes or is that an hour?
I mean, I think if you can put it in 45 minutes, I think that's generally appreciated.
that's what we're targeting.
Meetings typically take between 45 minutes and an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll target to probably make our presentation around 35 minutes or so, you know, because we have about 2 minutes a slide right now. We have 17 or 18 slides. So if we're getting through that 35 minutes, and then we do want to have that time available to have some engagement and discussion with council so that they can provide feedback and not feel rushed on that. So that's kind of what we were thinking in terms of timing. If that sounds all right to you, then that's what we'll target as presenting it.
Yeah, and you can also, I mean, it's up to you. You can also offer that the council can ask questions as you go if people have questions that come up during slides. Committee of the whole is typically pretty laid back. So there's lots of different ways that we do things. So if you prefer council members to jump in when you're on a particular topic, probably good to clarify that up front.
Which do you think is better? Which would you prefer?
I think it can be nice, like if they have questions about the sustainability plan when a slide comes up. I think it'd be great for people to jump in.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do that, and then we'll try to have a little bit of time at the end for, you know, general questions that people have when we're all done. So
and we definitely extend it out if needed. Like we don't typically cut off conversation. That's not the typical for the council. So
Okay. Phil, do you have the most recent copy of our annual report?
I do. Yep.
Can you send that to me? Thank you. All right, is Diane back on yet?
no.
Okay, why don't we just skip over item 5C, which was Fitchburg Star Arc. We'll come back to her and just go ahead and go to you, Chris, to talk about the Aldo Leopold recycling program initiative.
Okay. So there isn't too much to report on this. We did have a food waste audit where Kim, Diane, and I all participated. So Sustained Dane led the effort, and we went out and essentially evaluated in 4 different classrooms where they were having lunch in their classroom, what types of things were happening, you know. So we had qualitative observations, you know, there was things going on like, you know, there's packages of grilled cheeses that kids, you know, weren't even opening and they weren't going to eat. There were situations where there were applesauces where certain students couldn't even open the applesauce, and so then that was, you know, maybe deterring them from eating. So, you know, giving that feedback, you know, back to Madison Schools Food and Nutrition, so that they can, you know, just be aware of those types of things that we were observing, you know, kind of at the classroom scale. You know, and we took information related to how much milk waste they had, how much food waste, you know, we weighed it for each classroom. We had the amount of waste that they had. And then we also counted up the number of cartons of milk that were recycled. And so that's what we looked at. You know, we looked in some of their kind of the stations that we had set up earlier this school year to see how they were recycling within the school. And they were actually doing a pretty good job of keeping the contamination out of their hallway stations. So we were encouraged by that. You may recall that I mentioned at a past meeting that they were really struggling, and we found out that they didn't have lids. So, you know, one of the biggest triggers with recycling is, you know, the lids that are placed on it, you know, because, you know, people don't take the time to really read the signage. You know, you can do, you know, the best signage in the world, but if people don't want to take the time to do it, you know, that's not really enough of a trigger for them to necessarily recycle. But, you know, somehow, you know, the lids, you know, tend to be, you know, a pretty integral part to the whole process in terms of people see this lid that has, you know, square holes that, you know, would fit a carton, and that's about it. And they tend to just put the cartons in there, and we don't have the contamination that we do if we don't have the lid on there. So that's been probably one of our biggest takeaways from this whole process is the importance of a good lid to match up with, and and then having that opportunity, if you're putting on your own events or whatnot, always having a recycling container next to the trash. If there's only the trash option or only the recycling option, then trash will go into the recycling in that situation. Or if you just have the trash only, then everything's going to go in there, so you're not going to have success recycling. But overall, I think we had a successful school year, in consideration that it was still the ongoing pandemic and it took a while to get into the schools, but we did get a little bit more time in the schools in the spring semester. And if all goes correctly this summer, in the fall, we will be rolling out kind of the program that we have at Leopold across all 33 elementary schools across the Madison School District. So that's the hope, that things all fall into place for that to happen and have that infrastructure in place in the schools going forward. So that's all I've got. If anybody has any questions, feel free to bring them up.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. I had to unmute myself. I think it's a good overview. Hopefully it was helpful for you, Ben, to understand what that initiative is about.
Yeah, sounds very interesting.
Hey, Chris,
Okay.
I'm excited for you to share this with the council, because I'm not sure that anyone, or very few people that are currently on the council, have any idea about this initiative and how it's just really impressive. So I'm excited that's part of the presentation. I think they'll be excited to hear about it.
Awesome. Very good.
All right, Phil, can you pull up the agenda item, the Fitchburg Star articles, that table?
Yep.
Oh, Diane, it's not here. We can just go over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're updated through September. We've got Will on deck. So the two members who weren't able to make it this evening, we have Will on deck for July to write an article about composting. Kim said she is planning to write for August. I don't know if she's selected a topic yet. Diane may know, and if we talk slowly enough.
Well, she did write.
It's possible that Diane, sorry?
So Kim did write a note to both Diane and I about this topic today, and said that she is planning to do the August topic. I don't know that she's chosen her topic yet, but she is planning to write an article for August. So
yep. Yeah, so just unsure what the topic will be, but then Dan was planning to write for September on not necessarily meat-free diets, but ways to have lower impact diets, which would include decreasing meat consumption. That is what we have so far. I don't know. So I believe RCC agreed to write 9 articles a year. So that means by the end of September, we'll be at 8. I don't know if Diane knows whether more than 9 is okay, if they have space for that. And here we go. We can ask right now. Diane, are you back with us?
Yep, looks like Diane's joining us. There she is.
Oh, in just a moment. Hey, Diane.
Hi.
Hey, welcome back.
Thanks.
I was just wondering, so with Will, Kim, and then you on board to write articles for the next 3 months of the Star, that would put RCC at 8 articles in the first 9 months of the year. So does that mean that only 1 is needed for October through December, or would they print more than 9 if they were written?
They will print more, but our commitment ends at 9. So if we have more articles to write, and I hope we do, because usually in December or November we do something about holiday recycling. So yeah, that's not a problem. Kim, by the way, Kim is writing. She said to plan on her for August, and I'll double check. Will couldn't join the meeting tonight, but I'll double check that he's still on schedule for July.
Hey, Diane, do you want to give Bennett just an overview of this program that we do?
Sure. We have some guidelines. Are you familiar with the Star?
Yeah, I've seen a few of these articles.
Okay. The previous editor gave us some guidelines to write, and the Star is nice enough to print these articles at no charge to us. But there are some stipulations. They need to be from a persuasive point of view. They can't just be like a documentary or educational. It needs to be persuasive. I can't remember, I don't have access to it right now. I'm not on my normal computer. The word limit, but if you looked at the last month's, which was written by Chris, thank you, Chris, that's generally the size of the article. And I can send you the details, and you're welcome to write on any topic that relates to sustainability. And as you can see, we have months available. And if you're inclined and you want to write for September, I'll just bump to the next month. It's not a problem. I usually give the Star a heads up at the beginning of the year, how many articles we've committed to. And they have some, you'll see there was no article in March. That's because of the elections. That usually takes up a lot of space with political advertising. And my guess is there may not be any room. Well, there may or may not. Hard to say about October and November, but I know that we can get in a couple more articles this year. And if it's time, if it's time sensitive, then we just adjust our schedule a little bit. Phil has very nicely put together a list of previous topics. It's not a problem to duplicate. In fact, Chris's article was a duplicate of one that was maybe not exactly a duplicate, an update of one that was maybe 7 years old.
Sure.
But it bears repeating. So is that any questions?
No, I think that sounds pretty straightforward, but yeah, that's great. I'll have to look at some of those old ones and come up with a topic for later in the year.
Phil, would you mind sharing that list that you put together with Ben?
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, Ben, just kind of, like I was looking and we talked, we write all these articles every year. So you look at 9 articles a year and, we went back and it was 9 years since we had written anything on water conservation. And we had a really good article back then, and, I had remembered it, and Diane was able to locate that article, and I used some of the same points that we had in that article for this one. But, it was something that just hadn't been, we hadn't talked about it for such a long time. And then when we were having the discussion about writing that article, Josh had some ideas on water quality that may be a topic for him later this year in terms of an article just talking about what's in our water. And, there's a lot of, other things to talk about with our water quality. And that I think is a whole nother topic that
absolutely
we may tackle later on. So, there's surprisingly, it's kind of hard to duplicate topics. We have a lot of ideas, and this group is diverse, and we cover a lot of ground in sustainability. There's also a lot of flexibility within sustainability for a lot of different topics to be put out there. So, if you have an idea and you want to kind of run it by us, feel free to do that.
Yeah, sure thing.
I should mention it's not obligatory. I mean, if we have had some commissioners who are not comfortable writing an article, and that's fine. So we just get commitments from those of us who are, and actually topics. I started out with maybe doing a meat-free article, and I've come up with 2 different topics since then. So it depends on how the spirit moves me when I sit down to type it, which one it'll be on.
All right. Well, it sounds like, anything broadly related to sustainability is fair game for these.
Well, it's just not sustainability, right? It's other things too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Just anything under the umbrella of green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, with all these articles, Diane, we probably could compile them and make a book out of them.
We could, yeah, we could easily do that. And maybe we could sell a little money and boost the budget for the sustainability plan.
Yeah. So Diane, in your absence, Chris went over the recycling initiative, so we're done with that one.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on now to Gabrielle, a council update.
So we're 15 minutes ahead, just so everybody knows. So we're on a good pace.
Yeah, good job, Chris.
Okay, so a few things today. I wanted to mention that the tree advisory committee is finishing up the tree protection ordinance. I think that'll be referred out very soon. I'm not sure if it's going to come to RCC, but I might have it come here anyway, even though it might just be interesting for you. And if not, I'll just talk about it at my council report. The Phil, were you going to mention the B cycles, or did you mention it last time? The B-cycle service contract, we approved it a few weeks back, and the installation is supposed to be in July or August of this year. That's for those electric B-cycle bikes, the first phase of them. And then we also approved, or we kind of pushed forward a grant for phase 2, hopefully an expansion of the program in the near future if we get to secure the funding for it. Phil, anything to add on that, or do you know when they're going to go in?
I don't have a specific date, but yeah, we did. We've got some funding internally from CETA, and B-Cycle and the Fitchburg Chamber worked hard to get a few local sponsors to make up the additional costs for this. So we're calling this phase 1 implementation of a B-Cycle expansion into Fitchburg. Applied for a grant back in January with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, their Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. I think I mentioned this several months ago to the RCC in a staff update. We were awarded that grant, so that's going to help fund about 75% of the cost of a phase 2 implementation, which will expand B-Cycle even further around Fitchburg between, depending on when we can get additional local sponsors to make up that last 25% match, somewhere between 2023 and 24. We'll be looking at getting even more stations. So this first implementation, phase 1, I believe we're looking at between 5 and 7 locations and around 50-ish e-bikes.
Wow.
How does that contract work? Does Fitchburg pay for like the installation of the bike stands and somebody else owns the bikes and gets the rental fees, or how does that work?
Yep. So the payment for purchasing the bikes and getting them installed, that is coming from this initial upfront. So the sponsorships from local businesses and from the chamber, the CETA dollars, ultimately for phase 2, this grant funding from the DOT, that's paying for the upfront capital costs. B-Cycle will continue to own the bikes. Now, the benefit of that is that anytime there's a maintenance issue, they're responsible for handling that, replacing batteries, things like that. B-Cycle will also do things like tracking to make sure that all of the stations, all of the docks have some bikes there available. And if there aren't any, then they can drive around and balance them out to make sure that no dock is ever empty or completely full for too long. So the ownership of the bikes will remain with B-Cycle, and then we'll just kind of work with them to coordinate program delivery and advertising, because they're owning the bikes. I'm pretty certain the fees, and we still have to sign the final contracts, but I'm pretty certain that the fees for riding will go to B-Cycle.
If they rent in. If they take the bike out in Fitchburg, they can return it in Madison?
Yes. Yeah. So that was one of the big perks of going with B-Cycle, where there are other vendors that do e-bike programs. By doing B-Cycle, this should merge perfectly with Madison's program. They have, I think, 1 or 2 docks also in Monona. And again, that just overlaps perfectly.
Yeah, good. Great.
Phil, is that B-Cycle, B as in boy?
B as in boy, B as in bicycle.
B-cycle, right?
Okay.
I don't remember how they stylize it.
When do you think this will be operational?
Hoping for July. I think August is most likely.
Wow.
But I don't have an updated. I need to have a call with our B-Cycle sales rep in the next couple weeks.
And then are you doing some sort of a promotion like on the city's webpage and then e-blast and?
Yep. There'll be some pretty heavy promotion, and hopefully there can be some kind of like I haven't talked with like the mayor or the administrator about this yet, but it'd be great to have some sort of a like grand unveiling kind of a thing. Would be really cool. Get Fact TV there. We want to get as many people participating in this as possible, because the more riders we have, the more viable it is long term.
Maybe you could put a little blurb in the Star in the city section, just letting people know that B-Cycle, it'll be the July issue. So, B-Cycle is coming to Fitchburg and maybe some of the locations to promote it a little bit.
Yep. yeah, we'll make sure to promote it as far and wide as we can.
Good,
Yeah,
thanks for working on that.
Yeah, hopefully the locations will be scattered throughout the city and not, so everybody gets a chance to use them.
Yep. Yeah. So phase one, we're kind of looking at the central commercial corridor coming down Fish Hatchery Road. So because there's some CETA dollars, and that a lot of that is coming from the tourism budget with CETA, there will be docks at some Fitchburg hotels over on Nesbitt Road at, I think that's called Orchard Point Development, and then also at Hatchery Hill, those hotels. But then we'll also, and I'm blanking on phase one versus phase two. Phase one, we're looking to have over by Agora. We're going to have McKee Farms Park. I know ultimately a phase two station is going to go at the neighborhood hub up on Fish Hatchery. We're going to try to have one over, hopefully around in the Allied Drive area, like maybe near the Boys and Girls Club. Something over towards Terra Vesa and kind of uptown. So yeah, we do want to spread this all around.
Good.
Good.
The e-bikes definitely make it easier to travel a little bit farther. I think when everything was manual, e-bike program implementers were finding that riders would go anywhere from up to a quarter or maybe a half a mile radius from the dock where they picked up the bike. But with that electric assist, they're seeing the average ride distance increase quite a bit, and so we can get docks as much as a mile apart and still have people connect between them. So that's really exciting for bringing a bike share program into the suburbs.
Yeah, well, that's great. Wow.
Yeah, so good stuff
Yeah.
there. And I can jump back in.
Yeah.
I'm also sit on the Transition and Transit Committee meeting. So a couple of things out of TPC. We approved a transit plan. We had not updated the transit plan since 2010. So our transportation engineer did an update of it. Transit is interesting because we had a long discussion about this. Transit is how we move people within the city and intra-city. It's not really focused on the road construction. It's more focused on bus service and ways to reduce single-use vehicles, things of that nature. But it basically added language. We added language about climate change, about sustainability for the first time into that document. So that was a good change. Also, I mentioned this before, but the Madison Metro Network redesign, the bus redesign, there's been a lot of progress on that in the last month. There were some amendments to change the bus routes to make them more, to go in farther into the Fitchburg neighborhoods. Those all passed with the council. That passed, I think, through Madison. So that it continues to move forward. You may have also heard there's a lot of controversy in terms of the effect it's having on some of the most under-resourced neighborhoods are getting hit pretty hard in terms of losing convenient bus service. So I don't know if the plan is going to slow down at all, but if it moves forward as scheduled, in theory, it would go into effect next year, like probably mid-July, August of 2023 would be when the new bus service would go into effect. And then the capital improvement plan, the 10-year capital improvement plan was just released on a few days ago. The mayor's proposed plan, and there is a whole schedule, like always, about when what the process is. The next step is actually on Wednesday. We're having presentations by department. We're having a special finance committee meeting to have presentations. There's going to be a public hearing on June 28th, so very soon, about people kind of commenting on the plan. Then alders have a chance to submit amendments. Public hearing on those amendments on July 26th, and then followed by adoption of the amendments, or voting on the amendments and adoption of the plan. So moves pretty quickly. It should be done by July 26th. But that budget meeting on Wednesday is kind of when we do the first overview, and I haven't had a chance to read through the document yet. So I can let you know next time what it looks like. And then last item, the budget is also, we approved a schedule for the 2023 budget process. So let's see. I guess the first thing, it will be released on September 23rd. So it's looking at September, first public hearing in early October. And then the final vote will take place on November 1st. So that's the kind of general schedule, September late September through beginning of November. And that's all.
Great, thank you.
Well, 1 second, Gabriella, so then we should be in July, we should be discussing our operating budget requests so we can finalize them in August, or do we finalize them, right? I think that's on our calendar.
Yeah, so the budget schedule has the whole thing in terms of how staff proposals go in as well. So it looks like the requests start coming in. I guess that process starts basically now. The departments are going to start looking into, I think they're going to start submitting things to the finance director in July. And then the requests, the initial compilation of requests should be completed by August 12th.
So at our next meeting, we need to finalize our requests. We need to come up with them and finalize them.
For the RCC specific, I don't think for the operating budget, yeah.
Okay.
Do
That
we know how
should
much
be on
we
our
spent?
calendar, Ron, you know, like it's something that we normally have a placeholder on there, so just look for that.
Yeah, I think it used to be in August, so I think it's been moved up a month. So we'll just have to cover the proposal and finalizing in one meeting.
Okay, how do we know how much we've spent on a year this year?
We don't really know, and we don't really know what's been, I mean, we request and we don't know,
What we
because
get?
we don't have a separate line item in the budget. It gets merged in with Public Works, or now maybe in the planning department and split between the two. So we never really know. Claudia was pretty good about explaining detail, but we never really know what was accepted or not accepted. We just, based on last year's request, this is what we requested, and we were able to spend that. And so we just keep going forward. And if it's a new item, that's a little bit different. You have to, I think maybe with CIP, but we have to justify new items a little bit more. But RCC's requests, I have them going back several years, and they've never been exorbitant. I mean, not CIP is a little bit different, but operating budget, you know, we budget money for our community outreach events and our like our stormwater cleanup. We used to give out gifts for that. If we have any speakers coming in, it's pretty simple.
Okay,
Yeah, actually, we also have like a food budget item in there because, you know, we were able to get pizza for this last event. You know, they generally, Ian's Pizza only supports events every 6 months, so we could maybe get 2 of our events covered. So if we were having quarterly events, there'd be 2 events where we might, you know, go get cookies or something like that for, you know, just something for people, you know, to help entice them to come to the events.
We have to budget food separately. Finance wouldn't approve our spending money on food because it wasn't specifically budgeted. So that's a separate item. Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, generally it's been a pretty straightforward request. I would say that we're probably definitely coming in under budget because we haven't had as many events the past few years, you know, and, you know, we didn't have waterway cleanups in 2020. So, you know, I would say that in general, like, even though I don't know the exact numbers, you know, I would say that we're generally under our budgets. But, you know, and we don't, like Diane said, we don't ask for very much. And so we tend to keep it pretty similar each year unless there's something major. The last time I can remember something major is when we were trying to get the sustainability plan and asked for an extra $10,000. But was that a CIP item, Diane, or was that did we ask for that out of the operating budget too?
I think we did that in the
It'd be an
operating budget.
That'd be a planning document is an
Okay.
operating budget expense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when the last time we really ran into, you know, resistance that we had to have, you know, more than just kind of a meetings or a couple meetings worth of discussion on. So gives a little bit of background to folks.
So maybe Ben and Phil, if you could just let your respective department heads know that we'll be, I mean, it's not in the scheme of things, it's not significant at all, but just let them know that we'll be putting something together
Sure.
in July.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Diane and Chris. Okay, next part of our agenda is to move on to the staff and commissioner updates. And Ben, you're on here for solid waste. Have you have an update for us on any solid waste?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what Bill or Claudia would typically tell you, and I'm still kind of getting up to speed here. So I'll just say for solid waste, you know, one of the things that we're trying to work through right now is just in preparation for that piece of the town of Madison, or the two pieces that are being absorbed into the city, working with Pelletieri to kind of organize how the trash pickup is going to look. And there's also a lot of multifamily developments over there. So working with those management groups and seeing if they want those services extended to them. So yeah, there's a lot of pieces with this absorbing of the town of Madison as far as the solid waste side goes. So we've been kind of working through some of those things.
How does that work then with multifamily? Because usually Pelletieri will pick up, our contract includes 4 units or fewer, but do those 4 units or fewer, can they opt out?
That is one thing that we have to check on. I'm really looking for more of the 4 units or greater to see if they're interested in any service.
But the city doesn't normally, the city doesn't normally serve 5 units and more. So why would we arrange for that?
Well, I guess that's just one thing on my list. So I'll have to look into that more and let you know. It was just one thing I was going to look into. So maybe I'm speaking incorrectly there.
Maybe you can check that off your list and make your job a little easier.
Yeah, maybe I just saved myself a bunch of time there. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, yeah. So there's clearly some things that I'm still trying to figure out on that end, and coordinate with Pelletieri in preparation. I know that's November 1, so it'll be here before we know it.
Thanks, Ben. You're also on up next for stormwater. Any updates?
Yeah, so as far as projects, the one that I guess is probably closest to hitting the streets for construction is the Sherrill Drive project, the Sherrill Drive storm sewer improvements. I don't know if you're familiar with this one at all from past meetings.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
great. So yeah, we had received 90% plans from the consultant late last week. We've reviewed those, we've sent them back. We're hoping to get kind of some final plans within the next couple of weeks, so we can go and get that out to bid for probably fall construction. I'd imagine September timeline before they're out there.
And it'll be done, and how long will it take?
I would think this should take about a month. It's not a lot of work. There's a couple items with some larger storm sewer structures that they're going to have to pour out into the road, so that'll be a little bit of work, and it'll take some traffic planning as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say there's no reason they couldn't get this done in a month or so.
Good.
Good. Thanks. Oh, anything else?
Yeah, so there's a lot of studies out there, as I'm sure you're all aware. So we've been meeting with some of these consultants just to see where things are at. I just had a meeting with A2S regarding Curry Court. So that's obviously something that is of a big concern, and I've seen some other board meetings, and obviously there's a lot of concern with the flooding out there, so trying to move that forward, seeing what other options are out there, as well as the sub-zero kettle. So there's some discussion going on there with either pumping some of that water to Dunn's Marsh as kind of a last resort, and then trying to primarily infiltrate that water at an infiltration basin that would be constructed a few 100 feet away, kind of at the intersection of, I think is that Lacey and whatever that street is.
Lacey and Seminole.
Yeah.
Lacey and Seminole. So some sort of an infiltration basin there to try to pump some of the water from the kettle into that infiltration basin and see if you draw down that kettle area that way. So there's a few things kind of in discussion as potential options for drawing down that kettle. So I'd say those are 2 or 3 of kind of the main things that I've been working on while I've been here for the last 3 weeks. So I know there's plenty of other things going on in the city.
And a question on Curry Court. Is that the one where the residents did not want a pumping station?
Yes, that was
Okay.
my understanding.
When that gets resolved, how that's going to be handled, can you present that to RCC? Because we heard the options. We just don't know. We haven't heard how it's going to be handled. And along those lines, I know that the Barney, what is it called? Lake Barney.
Barney, yep.
That was included in some of the stimulus funds or whatever those are called. So is that also
Yes.
moving forward?
So you're right. I think there were some funds earmarked, and I think it was in that congressional direct funding from Baldwin's office, I think. Last I heard, there's some issues with on the Village of Oregon side with permitting. So in order to make this whole project work, there is some property in the Village of Oregon that would have to have a drainage or some sort of a conveyance channel constructed through it to take the water from Lake Barney.
Yeah.
So that's kind of tied up in some permitting issues right now with the Department of Agriculture. It's a drainage district, so there's some other permitting that has to be completed for that work to occur.
Okay, but you used to work with the city of Oregon, so you must have some connections. You can part the waters for that, right?
I can see where they're at, sure. Yeah.
Just-
Well put.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben. Anything else on stormwater? Is that it?
I think that's all I got for you tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. Phil, item C, 7C, anything on sustainability?
Yeah, just 2 additional things besides what we've talked about. One is that Andrew McFadden submitted a grant proposal for replacing streetlights with LEDs. There was kind of an additional round of funding from the Department of Energy. I believe it's been recommended for approval by the Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization and forwarded to the state for consideration. So it looks likely that that's going to get funded. And if so, then that'll be funding to at least get 100 streetlights upgraded to LEDs. These would be utility owned, but city maintained streetlight fixtures. So that would be a nice chunk of the remaining streetlights in the city that haven't been upgraded yet.
No, that'd be great.
Yep, that'd be fantastic.
Who's Andrew McFadden?
Oh, Andrew McFadden is our transportation engineer.
Oh, all right.
Sorry, I just realized he's a regular attendee for my other committee, the bike committee. Maybe he has not attended an RCC meeting yet.
He is actually leaving the city very soon.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I wasn't sure if that was public knowledge yet. He got a really cool opportunity. So unfortunately we'll lose him, but his parting gift was a hopefully successful grant application.
Well, pass on our gratitude.
Mm-hmm. And then I did reach out to Tracy Foss about at the last meeting, there was discussion about the possibility of a future guest speaker to talk about the city's water usage. And Tracy said she doesn't really like speaking in public, but she would certainly be willing to talk to the RCC. She can address kind of Fitchburg's water sourcing and kind of the lift stations and pumps and treatment before it goes out to the population, possibly usage as well. if the RCC wanted to hear about discharge and treatment after, post usage, then we'd want to get somebody from the sewerage district, from MMSD, to discuss that. But she would just want to, she'd want to know just kind of a set of questions or particular areas that the RCC wanted to hear about so that she can prepare something. She would be available at the October meeting, would be the soonest she'd be free.
Okay.
I would like to hear the stuff that Tracy would normally talk about. I would like to hear that. I've already, and I realize this is just me, but I've RCC way back at the turn of the century toured MMSD. So I've seen that part of it, and which is really interesting. Maybe the newer members would be interested in that at some other time, but I'd like to hear what the source part of it.
And I think that was more what the discussion covered last month. So that would absolutely make sense. And that's kind of what I'd prep Tracy for, is that we just want to hear about sort of the reservoir and water sourcing and delivery.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking with her.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
that's everything for sustainability.
Yeah. Okay, well, what time is it? It's 8:42. So we've done a good job moving through the agenda. Last thing on the agenda item is 7D, activities being conducted or monitored by commissioners. Just one thing I wanted to bring up is, do we want to start having in-person meetings now? Or do we want to continue these virtual meetings? I mean, personally, I'd like to be able to have in-house meetings with everyone.
Can we do a hybrid? Because I remember Josh said he prefers Zoom. So is it possible like today, I would not have been able to be in person.
Right.
This works great, but is it possible to do both?
I would guess so. We're kind of doing it now, aren't we? Or...
Yeah, most of I would say the vast majority of the meetings now are hybrid, because there's always, most meetings, at least some people are in person, so.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know that we made this clear, but for the committee of the whole, we're planning on being in person. For those that
vast majority of the council attends in person. I would say that usually 6 out of 8 people are in person.
Yeah, we thought that would be a better dialogue.
Is there any requirement that we have to meet in person, or?
At this point, no, we're still allowing virtual attendance because of the pandemic. So I think it's still 100% your personal choice.
Okay.
If I don't know, Phil and Ben want to check in with Fact TV and see if we could get the Jenny Sealing room. The hybrid meetings there are quite good. The TTC meets in there. We were kind of like the guinea pigs, and if Fact TV is comfortable having another meeting move in that room, it's really great for hybrid meetings. The way they is that the first room when you walk in to City Hall? Okay.
Yep.
They have like owl devices, so you can see cameras of people on screen. I think it's quite a good experience. So if Fact TV can make that work, it would be great to do that. And I'd be happy to meet in person. I go to most meetings in person.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start that process if it's okay with everybody. We'd have the hybrid meetings.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, Ben, have you seen our calendar of events?
I don't think I have. Or you know what? Actually, yes. Phil did show me that. Yeah.
Were you done, Ron? Because I have something I was going to share.
Sure. Yeah. All done.
And I have something after you, Diane.
Oh, sorry. You want to go first?
You can go first. I'll go second.
I'm one of the Fitchburg Dog Park advocates, and we arranged to have goats come to the dog park to tackle the invasive species in the wooded area of the dog park. The dog park is on the corner of Irish Lane and Fish Hatchery Road. And the goats, I was there Sunday morning to bring the goats in. And so you can go, if you're familiar with the dog park, there's a large exercise area and a small one. The large exercise area is closed to the public and to dogs while the goats are grazing in the woods. But if you want to go see the goats, or if you have children in your family or extended family that might enjoy that, it's pretty entertaining. So you can go into the small exercise area, and the goats can come right up to the fence. That part of the fence is not electrified. And I stopped by there on Sunday night. It was interesting to see how much they've already chomped away. there are about 25 goats, I think. 17 of them are small, and by small, I mean the size of maybe a schnauzer, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But they're only going to be there a couple more days, because when they're done chomping, then they start to challenge the fence. So when they finish everything, so if you want to go see them and the weather's decent down there, I would go Tuesday or Wednesday. They may be gone sometime on Thursday.
Yeah, I'll go check them out tomorrow. That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
I was wondering why all the dogs were in the small fenced area yesterday. Now I know why. I didn't see the goats.
Yeah.
All right. Just a thing I was going to add, I did go to a Sustain Dane networking event over in Shorewood, and met some of our counterparts that lead some efforts in Shorewood. And I've gotten the email for the gentleman that's leading that effort, but I thought they had a lot of neat ideas that they were doing in Shorewood, and I shared some of the things that we were doing, and so I thought it was a pretty decent exchange of information, and so I want to stay connected to them. In fact, that commission or green team in Shorewood had written the sustainability plan for the village of Shorewood on their own, so pretty ambitious commission, and they're doing a lot of neat events. I thought there was a few events that I thought were really interesting ideas that we could potentially try in Fitchburg. But at that event, so this was like Sustain Dane is trying to go around Dane County and do a sustainability event in all different parts of Sustain Dane. And I learned at that event that they want to do one in Pittsburgh. And so they are thinking of wanting to do one in early September. And the initial ideas were to do it around the O'Brien solar fields, and potentially have the meeting itself over at or the networking event over at Hop House as a possibility. So I will learn some more details on that, and probably potentially add that to an agenda item for the July or August meeting.
Okay, great.
If we have room in July, Ron, maybe Chris could just talk about some of the ideas that he brought back, that some of the events that we might want to copy.
Okay. Great. All right, anything else? If not, again, welcome, Ben, to the group. Look forward to having you on our team. And also, Scott, thank you for taking care of our audio issues out there. We got those corrected. With that, I'd just like to go ahead and adjourn the meeting unless somebody else has something.
I just want to thank Chris for getting us done early again. I think that's 2 meetings in a row. Good job.
I just looked out.
All right, so meeting officially ended at 8:48. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.